Welcome to night 3 of the Seance at the Whitney. This is our wacky, crazy, fun, inventive, nobody knows what's going to happen next book festival that we're doing all month long in February. I hope you will be able to attend as many nights as possible to help us solve the murder. There has been a murder. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. First, I want to let you know the schedule. This is the schedule. I'm going to try to keep to it as closely as I can. And again, just to remind you, we have no event on February 14th because it's Valentine's Day. The Seance at the Whitney is an interactive indie author virtual book festival. Every night we have author readings, interactive improv mystery game, and book giveaways. This is the amazing list of spectacular authors who are joining us this year. If you don't know anything about them, check out the replays, watch every night, hear them read, check out their books on Amazon or wherever your favorite bookseller might be. And now I'm going to turn this over to the amazing Christopher. Go for it, Christopher. You have to turn your microphone on, please.
There's always something.
His sight was projecting it to us all.
It was. Okay. Elizabeth Thomas is reading first. Among others, she is the author of The Circle, a play in 3 acts. It used to be 4, but 1 got edited out. Ironically, she has another book titled Arden's Act. Coincidence? Maybe. She will be reading tonight from Crossings, a book of short fiction. Please take the mic.
Okay. This story is called A Mediocre and Fairly Public Place. From what Patrick remembered of Sebastian, he would probably have preferred a green burial, but he had ended up in this exceedingly stereotypical cemetery, waiting with scant complaint to share the middle-class monolith of a double-wide tombstone with the woman who had no doubt chosen it. As far as Patrick knew, however, the widow still breathed. "Did you know him?" asked a voice from somewhere behind his back. Patrick had let out a short scream of his favorite Anglo-Saxon cuss word in a tone which had been called unmanly most of his 50-odd years. The voice dissolved into giggles before he could pivot to face it, but pivot he did. A woman stood there, one hand hovering vaguely in the area of her bemused lips as if politeness nudged her to push the chuckles back in. Patrick could only assume she had stepped forth from the small grove of cedar elms a short distance behind her. "I'm sorry I startled you," she said. "Well, I startle easily, as you are now aware." "In your defense, it is a cemetery. But did you know him?" During this exchange, Patrick managed to study her further. He would guess her to be a few years younger than himself. Her ash blonde hair provided camouflage for any strands of gray, but the faintest of cheerful crinkles showed under the glasses framing her hazel eyes. Her simple beige sweater and jeans gave no clue to her age. A large canvas bag hung from the crook of her elbow. Something in the depth of those eyes, combined with the slight prominence of her nose, however, made Patrick realize to whom he spoke. The realization, in turn, made him grateful he'd not brought the raison d'etre of his mission along for this reconnaissance. "Not as well as I would have liked," he finally told her. "I met him a few times years ago. That time he ran Parfait Con for us was amazing." "Oh, I'm Patrick Maniello." He reached out to her with his right hand, and she shook it without hesitation. "I'm Fiona," she volunteered. "Fiona Bancroft," she added, nodding towards the grave. "I had just begun to notice the resemblance," said Patrick. Even a casual acquaintance such as myself knew how much his daughter meant to him. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Fiona," he concluded. She smiled her thanks, but he read the wistfulness of grief in the expression. Yes, Sebastian had passed a year ago, but unless they had abused you, you never stopped missing your parents. Yet as he watched, She forced hints of melancholy from her face and focused her gaze more intently upon him. Even without the slight appraising squint, he would know himself studied. "You look familiar to me, Patrick," she pronounced. "And it's not just that I think I've seen you somewhere before. There's also something about your name. Patrick Maniello. Maybe your dad's old Facebook account?" Patrick offered. He knew better than to entertain the idea that she might actually know who he was, that he might actually have been watching the broadcast 20 years ago where he and Lila had accepted their Tony. But perhaps Sebastian had taken his daughter to the show when the tour hit Austin. Maybe he had taken her mother, too. Bet Lila just loved that. "Oh my God," Fiona exclaimed, recognition widening her eyes. "I know who you are. Patrick Maniello, you wrote the music. That friend of Dad's wrote the book and the lyrics, but you wrote the music. Patrick, you're really talented. You remember, after all this time? Yeah, did you guys write any more shows after that?" "We never collaborated again," Patrick told her. "But Lila and I stayed friends right up until her passing." "I'm sorry," said Fiona. I hadn't realized." "Sebastian was kind enough to preside at her services just as she wished," he told her, "only a few years ago." "But you must have kept composing," said Fiona. "You certainly look prosperous." She gestured at him, indicating his black Italian suit. "I like the shirt," she added. "Not every man can pull off fuchsia." "Ha! Most people would not associate continued composing with prosperity. But I have been fortunate, and you are right. I have kept composing, and I've managed a decent living. The Tony sure didn't hurt, that's for sure." "I saw that, too," she said. "Daddy made sure we had the TV tuned to the awards broadcast." Wow. Patrick had been a lot younger then, but apparently he had not aged beyond her recognition. "When they did the show in Austin," he asked, "did they splurge and do the wedding scene with the handbell fanfare? I wrote two different versions, one for companies that could afford at least a small orchestra but didn't have access to a decent bell ensemble, and one for Broadway and other venues that could go all out." "Yes, I've never heard anything like that in a musical, before or since," Fiona replied. "Well," said Patrick, "that's where the bulk of my comfortable living comes from these days. Handbell compositions. Although some money still comes in from the show royalties." Something of a pause went by before Fiona, letting the slightest of Texas lilts into her voice, noted, "You're not from around here, are you, Patrick?" He shook his head. "So is this some kind of pilgrimage, then? Coming down to visit my daddy's grave?" "No," Patrick responded. While he registered an immediate twinge over the automated quickness of the lie, fast upon its heels came a sense of how Lila would have been so proud of him. "Not that he doesn't deserve a pilgrimage, Fiona," he hastened to add. "No, I just happened to have a piece premiering with the Austin Ensemble tonight. Dear God, don't let her look it up. And I thought since I was in the area, I'd come pay my respects." She took her time still with that direct gaze of hers. Lila had firmly believed Sebastian possessed true psychic ability, and Patrick felt certain that if she could see Fiona right then, she'd say he had passed it on to his daughter. He made sure he returned her look without the tell of blinking or glancing away, until she nodded toward the canvas bag on her left arm. "Well, Patrick, if you like, you can help me plant bluebonnets over him. I know you're too dressy to get down in the dirt with me," she added quickly, "but you may scatter the seeds after I prepare the soil without ruining your suit." And that's, I think, my 8 minutes.
Excellent. Well done. 31 seconds remaining. Good job. Well done.
Okay, so it is with great pleasure I introduce tonight's second reader. We all know her, but did you know she's not only published several novels and anthologies, has editing skills greater than Detroit's redistricting commission, but is also responsible for coining and copywriting the phrase If at first you don't succeed, well, your name's probably Deborah Reed. Here to prove that the pen is truly mightier than the reed. Sword,
Sword.
sword, yes. I give you my friend, Diana Catherine Penn.
Well, thanks. That was unexpected and fun. Okay, here we go. Today I'm reading from Drake's collection of short stories, A Duck Echoes. Everything that's cute. 24 children between 5 and 7 years old and 4 adults. What could possibly go wrong? The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. I never thought I could enjoy a song less than Baby Shark, but here it was, in surround sound, volume unstunned, in various octaves. The drive from the school to the zoo was only 8 miles. Still, I think I heard that chorus at least 12 dozen times because repetition, evidently, is the foundation of entertainment. In fact, I didn't realize it actually was a chorus until I found myself surrounded by tiny people who clearly understood the vast complexity of juvenile music more than I did. It turns out there are about 10 different stanzas in between each chorus. Who knew? When thankfully the wheels on the bus stopped, an entirely different experience awaited. With squeals of joy, best friends for life grabbed hands and escaped the confines of seats to the adventure of the parking lot. When asked to form 2 lines, one by one, they balanced precariously upon the thin yellow parking lines that led to the entrance gate. They jumped with kangaroo precision over vast 6-inch blacktop expanses between each line. The adults flanked the children, reinforcing their goal of avoiding the tar. Sometimes you have to play the game that's already started if you want to win without tears. A sallow march of tiny feet proceeded through the gate, a gag order firmly in place, lest the offenders become invisibly shackled to the closest adult for the remainder of the trip. I was mesmerized by the instant compliance when threatening fun hung in the balance. In my extremely limited experience, bribery worked, but this was far more effective. I wondered if it would have the same impact in the boardroom. After a moment of reflection, I decided to abandon the idea. Punishing an unruly executive by velcroing them to me for the duration of an already interminable meeting felt a lot more like punishing me than them. Once inside the gated community, we created breakout groups and headed in various directions with a promise to meet at the train station at the back of the park in 2 hours. 2 hours? I doubted I could last that long without my ever-present triple shot espresso, but I'd give it the old college try. As the minions surrounded me, I distributed colorful, informative maps, which instantly became origami projects for nimble fingers. What had I gotten myself into? Over the course of the next 2 hours, tiny yet remarkably loud voices giggled, screamed, howled, crowed, trumpeted, and quacked as we walked, waddled, slithered, treaded, and mimicked flight through the Arctic tundra, the humid rainforest, the dry desert expanses, and the deepest, darkest jungles. A few paces ahead of our small group, I noticed a couple with the foresight of magicians. Their toddler walked happily in front wearing a monkey backpack, which was surreptitiously conveniently at the end of a leash. The man held it deftly in his hand, not a bit of tension on the cord, nor his face, as his companion smiled broadly. I envied them. I envied them a lot. My small band of, what were we now, flamingos, met up with another of our troop as together they counted the total number of humps. They shrieked with delight when they realized, with their far more adept adults' humor, that it was indeed Wednesday. The comedian shot a glance at me, giggling to herself. I returned a weak smile, trying hard to feign amused composure. The rigors of a hostile takeover did not prepare me for the degree of overwhelm from a deluge of silliness in the sunshine. I was doomed. When at last we arrived at the train station and combined our tiny bands of adrenaline bunnies, a sigh of relief washed over me as I slumped into a nearby bench. The seasoned educator, the maestro of mayhem, took over once again, appearing no worse for the wear. The power she wielded over the mob was beyond impressive. She commanded instant silence and total attention by simply raising one gently nimble hand into the air. The effect was hypnotic and a little scary. They stood in a line 2 by 2 and talked quietly. The adults, except for the comedian from our camel encounter, stood near their groups using the metal line stanchions as crutches to our aching bodies and muddled brains. We spoke not a word, but shared our misery in silence. The comedian laughed affably with the scholar, both clearly veterans of the field trip circuit. The trip back to the front of the park was a welcome respite for my body, if not for my ears. Tiny voices are accelerated when traveling at speeds faster than they can walk. They echo through every tunnel with the resonance of dynamite in a coal mine. How I longed for the annoying bedlam of office cubicles and telephones that never stopped ringing. At least those sounds I could process into something that led to tangible reasons to endure them, namely, several extra digits after the comma at the end of my bank balance. This was just pandemonium without reason. Why would anyone choose this? Before the bus ride back to normalcy, our first stop was the Mercantile of Memories, where itty-bitty hands moving faster than New York City bicycle messengers touched everything within reach and miraculously broke absolutely nothing. Each teensy-weensy negotiator worked hard to secure the deal from their teacher, who was endowed with a budget that allowed for equal distribution of funds among the throng. To my amazement, not one child was left disappointed. That was a trick I needed to learn. The title, World's Favorite Uncle, may be distinguished, but it does not prepare one for the unknown exploits of chaperoning a field trip. As I slouched into my seat, listening to the 16th chorus of "This is the song that never ends," I looked at my nephew, a minuscule copy of my brother, and asked him, "Why did you get the river otter?" He looked at me with gigantic blue eyes, completely relaxed after his day of pure elation, and gently placed the slender stuffy on my lap. Everything that's cute is better. I smiled at the wisdom of his words. He would get no argument from me. The end. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Christopher, for taking over the MC duties this evening. I appreciate it. Okay, everybody turn your microphones on. This is when the insanity begins. Let me share my screen.
Ends?
Well, okay. Day 3 of the insanity. For those of you who have not been watching the replays or who have not been in the room so far, this is what's going on. The seance at the Whitney. At the Ghost Bar inside Manor. Somebody needs to turn off their mic. We're getting feedback. At the Ghost Bar inside the Whitney Manor, an historic Detroit estate, a world-famous psychic medium has come for an exclusive invitation-only seance. With so many curious about spiritualism around the world, this event promises to connect the living and the spirit worlds, opening doors to mysteries that transcend time and space. But when the seance spirals into a chilling rendezvous with a vengeful spirit and a shocking murder, it falls upon those in attendance to unravel the truths hidden in the darkest depths of the past. A spirit is summoned, vowing revenge on their killer. One of the guests becomes hysterical, claiming the spirit is there for them. Suddenly, the lights start flickering, and wind pushes the windows open, extinguishing the candles around the room. The room and everyone in it are thrust into darkness. When the light returns, that same hysterical guest is lying on the floor, dead. Who killed them? Why? Was it the furious spirit or something far more earthly? Tonight, our cast around the seance table. The medium is played by the great Christopher Gare. His assistant is Donna Newman. The author is Amy Kelso. She is absent this evening, just so you know ahead of time. The socialite is Don Menge. The spouse of our victim is Jules Nelson. The greatest fan in the world of the great Christopher Gare is played tonight by Marianne Wieland. The aloof guest is played by Gary Floyd. The maitre d' is played by Melinda Falgo. She is traveling abroad today. She will be back in the room tomorrow. And I am your storyteller. Tonight, we are going to do as we always do every night, turn on our microphones, ask questions of our cast members and each other if you think someone else in the room might have something to add. And we're gonna see if we can get to the bottom of it. So, who would like to begin our questioning this evening? Does anybody have interrogation? Raise your hand if you do. Mary Beth McGee, go.
Oh, hey, well, one thing I'm curious about, and this is for Jules. How did you and your husband know the great Christopher, that you brought him for this event?
We didn't know him at all. He was actually the room or the ghost bar was booked by his group, and then we just are there to I guess support the event.
For those of you who may have missed it, Richard Whitney is our victim, and he is married to Jules Nelson. Well, was before he untimely died.
It's cheaper than divorce.
Any other questions?
Donna.
Donna.
Donna,
I do not
go.
have a question. I do not have a question. I just want everybody to know that the only reason, since you guys said that you caught me slipping out, was because that is part of my job. It's part of the mystique from the great Christopher, and I was doing what he asked me to do.
Okay, so that's interesting. Who else? Elizabeth, go.
This question is for Jules, and I apologize if you asked this last night, but are you sad
I'm
that your husband's dead?
Devastated. We've been married for 5 years, but I've known him my whole life since I was a child, and I've been in love with him all of that time. And we were just getting ready to go on a 5-year anniversary trip, and I don't know what to do with my life anymore. Devastated.
I'm sorry.
Gary Floyd, go.
I have a question for Christopher. Why was Donna slipping out of the room?
Marianne, would you please educate him?
Donna slipped out of the room after all the light.
He was.
I want to know why. She just
He
said
wants to
Christopher.
know. We have to call him by his name, and it's not Christopher.
The great Christopher. Why was the great Christopher tell you to slip out of the room? I would like the great Christopher to answer that.
Great Christopher.
All knowing.
Go, great Christopher.
I hear you. I have nothing to say at this time on that.
Sounds a little shifty to me. Mandy Jo, go ahead.
Donna, just before you left the room, do you know who was sitting next to the deceased?
No. All I would know is that I was told to go, into the ghost bar, where I was to turn on and off the lights as part of what great Christopher show.
Yeah, don't slip up. It could be your paycheck. That could be bad.
Yeah. Sorry, great Christopher show. It's all part of his show.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Marianne, go ahead.
Donna, if you were turning the lights off and on, is that what was in the butler's pantry? Is that where you were doing that from?
Yes, I was in the butler's pantry, turning the lights on and off at the breaker.
So maybe the great Christopher is in as great
Great.
as we might think.
So there's some greatness there.
Mediocre Christopher.
Being an aloof guest. What do you know about where the crystal ball came from?
Who was your question directed at, Andrew? I missed that.
The aloof guest, Gary Floyd.
Gary, what do you know about the crystal ball, Gary?
I seem to recognize the crystal ball, and I thought I saw Richard and Nora with it in going out to the forest, where they were using it to bring about their creativity.
As children, you mean?
As children.
Okay.
It that struck me as that. I don't know how it got here, but
Okay, so it was an artifact that came from the Whitney Mansion grounds. That's intriguing. Anyone else have questions? Mary Beth. Mary Beth, go ahead.
Okay, 2 questions actually. One for Julie. It was by invitation only. Why was Gary invited since he had no clue of what he was doing there? And was
I don't know. I was not in charge of the invitations. So we just rented out the ghost bar for a sizable compensation. So we might have needed that compensation a little bit. So we didn't look at the guest list too closely, I don't think.
Okay. And second question for the great Christopher. Are you still able to reach the spirit of Norma that we could ask her some questions?
That is a very good question. I have been trying to redo that in my mind. And honestly, the only problem I have with that is I have the Taco Bell that keeps coming up in my esophagus the entire time. I have been unable to at this time. So it is possible it could happen in the future. I just need some Pepto-Bismol first.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Does anyone else have questions? Gary, go ahead.
I had a question. How long have Christopher and Donna worked together?
Donna, Christopher, how long have you been working together? When did the two of you meet?
I have nothing to say about that.
Let me check.
We've been working
Oh,
together
no.
for.
Andrew's
Sorry,
got
it took me a minute.
crystal
We've been working together for just a few years, but I go everywhere he goes. I mean, he saved my life, and so I trust him wholeheartedly.
It's my understanding that you met him approximately 5 years ago. Is that correct? Seems to me
right.
It seems to me I remember you telling me something when we were downstairs in the foyer before we came up to the ghost bar. And I said, so how long have you been working for the great Christopher? And you said about 5 years.
About 5 years.
And you did mention that you felt so emotionally connected to him because he saved your life. I thought that was very touching. Mandy Jo, go.
So what did the great Christopher do to save Donna's life?
Christopher or Donna, you can answer that question.
I apparently have dementia. I have nothing to say about that.
Donna, what did Christopher do to save your life?
I was really in a very dark spot when he offered me a job. He said that my skills could be helpful, and he offered me a job. I honestly didn't think that anything I had would be able to help him. As I said, I was in a really dark spot, but he saw something in me that I didn't see, and we've been together since.
He is a very kind-hearted medium, after all. Andrew, go ahead.
For Donna, well, what are your special skills?
She's checking.
You guys are catching me off guard. Well, for one, I'm ambidextrous. which comes in very, very handy because I can use my right hand and my left hand exactly the same level. That's one skill that I have that he needed.
Awesome. Okay.
That's very handy. Uh,
After yesterday's conversation, I find it interesting that that's the skill you remember Christopher noticing most. That's really interesting. Who else has questions? Let's see if we can. Marianne, question. Go ahead.
I just have another observation. This is for Donna again. Donna, if you're ambidextrous like that, can you please take your right or your left hand and get a bottle of Pepto-Bismol for the great one so he's not sitting there uncomfortable while he is trying to help us here? Please, please, someone do something for him. He needs to not be sitting there burping up Taco Bell.
he ate the Taco Bell. He's got to pass that Taco Bell. Just like ghosts pass to beyond, the Taco Bell will soon pass as well.
And let's not go there. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
In a taco, out a burrito.
Dawn, go ahead.
This one is for Jules. Before the seance began, we were all downstairs in the ghost bar enjoying our drinks. I didn't see you and your husband. Where were you?
Well, we had a little argument about the seance. He didn't want to go. He thought it was a dangerous idea, and I reminded him that the sizable compensation that we were getting would be quite helpful, and we parted our ways. But it took us a few minutes to regain our composure. So he arrived shortly after I did. But yes, we did get there just before it started. So
Andrew, go ahead.
This question is for Julie. Do you have the receipt for the crystal ball that you got from the pawn shop that you had pawned earlier and later killed him with?
no, I don't believe in paranormal artifacts, so I would not have bought something so bawdy.
Right?
I thought for sure she was going to say she doesn't save the receipt.
Miranda has a question. Miranda, go ahead.
Okay, so this is curious. Jules, you mentioned you were having some financial problems and you really needed the money for this. What was going on that is the restaurant in financial strait, or why was this such a financial why were you in financial strain right now?
The only thing I can say is that it's just gonna help to go towards some fixing up of the mansion and stuff like that. So it was money that was gonna be well used. So
well, and with all the renovations going on currently, why wouldn't you take a large sum of money to have nonsense happen in the ghost bar, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Nonsense.
Oh, well, you know.
Mackenzie has a question in the chat. Does Miss Nelson have an assistant like the great Christopher does? One that might have bought the ball from the pawn shop for her?
No, Miss Nelson has to do all her own errands. So, unlike the great Christopher.
He's so special. Donna, go ahead. Donna.
This is for Jules. My question is, I know you've been married only 5 years, and but being that you've been married for 5 years, have you guys talked about your estate planning in those 5 years, such as setting up a will, life insurance policies, and all of that?
I have nothing to say about that.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
Christopher.
The great Christopher, the great, amazing, incredible, miraculous Christopher. Go ahead.
This question is for Julie. You say that you've been a little hard up for money. How can you afford a cruise?
Well, we've been saving for that. So that's separate. Like that's the money that we saved up for. But the money from the seance goes directly towards the mansion and it's much needed renovations.
So just so you understand, the Whitney estate is held in conservatorship by the estate of David Whitney, the man who built it. There are still some descendants living. Jules is one of them, and she by marriage, because she was married to Richard. So really, as with all of us who work in corporations, Andrew, you know this, corporate money and personal money is often separate. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, as we know in Clue, we have to establish things one at a time. We don't know who, but we know what. We have the crystal ball, and we've established that you've been around for a significant amount of time. Were you aware of where this artifact was and how it ended up there and how to use it as a weapon?
So you mean
Jules that question?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I've never seen that before. So, and I arrived in the room just before it started. So I wasn't in the room while it was being decorated or set up or whatever you want to call the paranormal mumbo jumbo stuff. So,
But by admission, this was an artifact from the actual event center. Yes?
Gary Floyd mentioned that he
Yes.
recognized the crystal ball.
I had recognized it, but I wasn't sure where it came from.
I'll say I've never seen it before. If Gary's seen it before, I mean, we're not even sure who Gary is by his own admission. So we don't even know where he would have seen it. So
You must tell the truth.
exactly.
All right. One last question. We'll do Marianne and then Mandy Jo, if we can do the question in the chat. Marianne, go.
This question is for Gary. You said yesterday that you weren't sure how you got there. You just were in some sort of trance and you were just there. When you appeared there, were you sitting at the table when you came out of your trance, or were you somewhere else in the Whitney? And were you carrying anything?
I was not that I'm aware of. One minute I was sitting down and I was at the table.
I do recall because I peeked. I saw Gary after Richard was bludgeoned and laying on the floor in a pool of his own blood. I saw Gary standing next to the great Christopher when the lights came back on. And now the last question for the night. Mandy Jo?
Looks more like a comment, but definitely something to think on. Miss Newman's ambidextrousness might allow her to lend a right or left hand to Miss Nelson if she needs someone to buy or hide a possible murder weapon like a crystal ball from a pawn shop.
Mackenzie, I am always staggered at your note-taking abilities. Well done. Good observations. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thus concludes our evening of interrogation at the Seance at the Whitney. Thank you all for your questions. I hope everybody's taken notes and go back and watch the replays, which we'll post every day between 9 and 10 a.m. on our Facebook channel, on our website, on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to see the replays, and you can go back and watch, listen what happened. Ask questions, collect clues. At the end of the month, we will sling accusations to win prizes. Remember, the seance lasts for the entire month of February. And if you happen to hear one of our cast members say, "I have nothing to say about that," it means either they genuinely don't have that information, or the question you have asked is not relevant to the murder mystery. All right. It is now time for our wax dripping tally. The candles have cooled. We have collected the drippings, and this is where we are. just to let you know, in case you missed it, every night when you come in to register, you're telling us the author who recommended you come to the seance, and we are collecting those drippings for each author, and they're going to win prizes. The top 5 authors will win prizes at the end of the month. Here's the standings so far. Deborah Reed has 27. Marianne Wieland has 21. Andrew Allen Smith has 15. Douglas Pierce and Jules Nelson are tied for 14. And Amy Kelso has 12. Congratulations, top 5 authors. You're doing very well. All right. Talismans from the spirits. Every night we spin the wheel of happiness and we give away books. Each night, the author who reads will send out a book that they read from. If your name comes up on the spinning wheel of happiness, you have 24 hours to send me an email with your mailing address, and the authors will ship those books out USPS Media Mail by March 5th. My address is diana@pagespromotions.com. So I'm gonna share my screen with the spinning wheel of happiness on it. But before I do that, my book tonight is A Duck Echoes. It's actually not me, it's Drake, but he's in New Zealand this week, so I'm doing it for him. And Elizabeth Thomas, your book was Crossings. Do you have a copy of it nearby? Oh, look at that. Andrew's got it too. And there's Crossings by Elizabeth Thomas. Thank you, Andrew. Alrighty, here we go. I am going to share my screen with Spinny Wheel of Happiness. And last night the sound didn't work. Hopefully the sound will work tonight. I'm going to double check just to make sure. It does say my sound is shared, so we'll see. Okay, here we go. The first spin is for Elizabeth Thomas's book. Ready? Here we go. Congratulations, Mandy Jo, you won a book. Yeah. Okay, the second spin is for my book. Drake's book. Our book. Okay, here we go. Kenzie, congratulations. You won a book. Kenzie, if you already have that book, let me know in the chat, and I will send you a different one if you already have Duck Echoes. All right. Before we go, as we do every night, we do shots across the bow. And last night, we took a poll to find out who everybody believes did it. And as of last night, we were tied with Jules and Gary being the top 2 vote getters. I want to go around the group one more time based on what you know so far. I'm going to call on you. Let me know who you think did it. Mark McCraw, who killed Richard Whitney?
I think it was Gary.
Okay. Emma Palova, who killed Richard
Oh
Whitney?
gosh, I don't know. The obvious one would be Jules, but then again, that would make too much sense. So I still think it was the great one because he wanted to hook up with Jules, and you know, the old man was standing in their way.
All right, Mandy Jo, who did it?
Gary.
Okay. Mary Beth McGee, who did it?
Well, I'm leaning toward Donna tonight.
Okay. Elizabeth Thomas, who did it?
Gary.
Wow, Gary, you're in big trouble. Okay. Miranda, who did it?
Tonight I'm leaning towards Jules.
She was in the hot seat last night.
It's always the spouse, you know. It's just
Jennifer Rains, who did it? Oh, your microphone is turned off, dear.
I think the great Christopher.
Okay. Mackenzie Keatley, put your accusation in the chat. Deb McPeak, who do you think did it?
Jules.
Wow, they're picking on you tonight, Jules.
No hesitation at all.
Jacob
But
Bowen,
he
who do you think
deserved
did it?
I mean, I'm kind of having fun with Emma's theory. Christopher's got that great hat to go with it and hide everything. So
Nice. Okay. Jules, come on, lend your voice to this. Who do you think did it?
I still think it's Gary, because I mean he doesn't know how we got there. He doesn't. There's a lot of fuzzy stuff going on.
It's a lot of fuzzy math. I'll give you
I
that.
do think he's the weapon. So it's like he's working with somebody else, either involuntarily or whatever. But I do think that Gary's the one who did it. So
Okay. John Rinaldi, who do you think did it?
Gary.
Jeez, the two of you, neck and neck. Diana Duell, who do you think did it? Oh, your microphone's off.
Yeah. I'm not sure. This is my first night. So
okay. Reserving judgment. I like that.
Yep.
I like it. Donna Newman.
I value my job, so I'm going to have to say Miss Nelson.
A wise decision, I think. Marianne Wheeland. Who did it?
I think it's Gary, and I think he's putting on the fact he doesn't know how he got there. Plus, he's pretty strong. He could pick up a heavy crystal ball and hurl it anywhere, I think. So that's my thought for the night.
Andrew Smith, who do you think did it?
I think Julie Nelson did it at the seance table with the crystal ball.
Thank you for playing our game. Mandy Jo, what did Mackenzie say?
She says, I'm still going to say Mr. Gare, but also Miss Nelson is a close second. Mr. Gare could have used Mr. Floyd as a weapon with his greatness, if it can be called that, to kill the victim.
Kenzie. Christopher, who do you think did it?
I'm thinking a combination of Gary and Julie.
Ooh, tag teaming. Okay.
Starstruck lovers that have been separated for a long time by marriage. I could see that.
madly in love with my husband, remember?
I'm being railroaded.
All right, I believe we made it all the way around the room, did we not?
I didn't. I think it's
Gary, that's right. Gary, who do you
think it was
did it?
Christopher and Donna, because they can't get their stories straight as to why she went to the other room.
I have nothing to say about that.
I told you why I went to the other room.
Because Christopher sent you.
But Diana didn't tell me I sent her.
Uh-oh.
Storyteller, always blaming things on the storyteller.
Script. Gotcha.
All right. Thanks everybody. Real quick, shots across the bow. Christopher Gare.
Thank God we didn't talk about the one subject tonight. Thank you all.
Jules Nelson.
I'm maintaining my innocence tonight, so.
Okay.
A likely story.
Marianne Wheeland, shots across the bow.
I'm having a blast. I hope everybody else is too. This is really fun. Thanks for a great script, Diana.
We'll see. It's only day 3. It may all fold like a house of cards. We'll see. Donna Newman, shots across the bow.
I'm just missed yesterday, and I really feel bad because I had to watch the video, and all you guys blaming me. It wasn't me.
This is what happens when you don't show up. You're at the mercy of the room.
Do.
What happens when you do show up?
Gary Floyd, shots across the bow.
I'm looking forward to getting the author here and Melinda, because I think we get some questions for them.
Yep, absolutely. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We ended a little bit early tonight. I appreciate your timeliness. I appreciate your fun questions. And if this is how it's going to go, I'm going to have a blast. So thank you all for indulging my ridiculous little story this month. I appreciate it. For those of you watching in YouTube land, check out the other episodes. You never know what you may have missed. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye. Bye.